PUSHLiving.com presents the Wheelchair Accessible Lifestyle Podcast, pushing the boundaries of disability-inclusive design, travel, and lifestyle. Here, you'll find stories of triumph, courage, and clarity. You'll discover you're not alone and hear from inspirational guests from the disability community and beyond. You'll get fresh reviews of the best inclusive travel locations and fabulous products to help make your life more functional, healthy, and fun. We will intrigue, enlighten, and encourage you to live your best life on wheels. Whether you're a wheelchair entrepreneur, a stay-at-home mom or dad, or newly disabled, you will love the advice and ideas we share to help you learn, grow, and push your own boundaries. Now, let's roll.
Good afternoon. This is the PUSHLiving podcast. Today we have Lindsey Freysinger. Lyndsey is a master's in nursing and a C-5 SCI, living a life of wholeness. Basically, that is what our podcast is about today. It's living a life of beauty, intimacy, and wholeness, which is her words. So I really want her to share with you what she means behind that today. Let me give you a little background on Lyndsey before I invite her on to speak. She's a German and Australian blonde-haired beauty, as you can see. She became a nurse in 2008, and at 21 years old, so she really knew what she wanted to do, and she was a go-getter from a very young age. She was actually living in Arizona, working as a pediatric nurse and doing her residency for her master's in anesthesia. Then she was injured 3 months from graduation and became the C-5 Incomplete Quadriplegic. And we'll ask her a little bit about that accident and about her functioning today when we speak with her. She then wanted to return to nursing. Of course, it's always been her passion, but then she found out that they were just not able to make the accommodations for someone, as she said, with a severe disability. So, and we mean severe disability as someone who is in a wheelchair. So think about that. So she decided to go on and get her master's in something called nurse leadership. She's now pursuing her doctorate in the same field and focusing on educating healthcare providers on caring for people like her. Now, this is something that she said to me in her interview, which I was shocked by. She says, I was horrified at what, as a nurse, I didn't know about healthcare for people with disabilities. So Lyndsey is out on a mission to actually change that. And like our PUSHLiving audience, on living a life of wellness herself, not just in her body, but in her spirit, what she calls the social determinants of health. So what does that mean? That means having a purpose in your life. That means being connected to your community in one way or another. Having an income, if that's what you desire and you're able to do. An education and living a life, as I said before, of wholeness. So welcome today, Lyndsey.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, it's such a pleasure. You're such a beautiful woman. I'm going to let everybody know I've been a friend of yours for quite some time, but not actually intimately knowing you until I saw a photo shoot that you did with your now husband of 3 years, which really discusses intimacy and disability. So we're going to have those images in our podcast notes on PUSHLiving.com. And we really want to applaud you, first of all, for having the courage to do that photo shoot, because it definitely is an issue, right? Is that why you did it in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of did it, first of all, because it was offered to us as a gift. We just allow friends to come out and stay with us. And a friend of ours brought her friend who we'd never met, who was a photographer from Pennsylvania. And she offered to do like a boudoir shoot. Plus, she wanted some diversity in her overall just portfolio.
Okay, yeah.
So we did some shots in the chair. We did some shots of me alone on just like a regular chair. We did shots in the bed that I have that is set up with rings and things so I can move around in the bed. And yeah, I mean, a lot of it was to have fun with my husband. And then a lot of it was too, like I wanted people to see that disability is still sexy and we just have to adapt a little bit.
Well, you sure did prove that. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with the audience.
Yeah.
So did you feel, because here you are getting a doctorate degree in nursing, did you feel a little bit apprehensive that, what is your professional persona going to be with these type of boudoir images?
Yeah, I mean, it is risky putting something that's so intimate and personal out there.
Yeah.
But I look at it as a way of bringing awareness to situations that people in healthcare aren't exposed to as much. And so to me, it's still doing nursing. It's still doing advocacy.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Well, that kind of brings me back. Let's rewind a minute. You were injured 3 months out of getting your degree, your master's.
Mhm.
So what happened? And then I want you to rewind, go fast forward a little bit and talk about how you met your husband, and where you met him. What was the process of that like?
Mhm.
And was that your first relationship that was intimate after your injury, etc.? So tell us when it happened, how it happened, and then a little bit about you and your husband's relationship that really led to these photos.
Yeah, so my injury happened almost 7 years ago, February 15th of 2013. I was in a car accident with Stephanie, and it was my fault. I looked down for directions. I hit a pothole. I was going the speed limit, but the speed limit is 75. And I was it was in Texas. That's where one of my residency placements was. My school was based out of Arizona, but our residency placements were all over the country.
Okay.
I'd been in Arizona, Montana, New Mexico, and then Texas. And my accident happened there. Rolled over 7 times and broke my neck. My friend ended up with minor injuries that took about 2 months for her to recover, and she was able to go back to anesthesia school and finish. So really good, because if she hadn't done well, I think it would have been a different story for my recovery, especially like emotionally.
Right.
And then I have experience as a pediatric ICU nurse and then also as a trauma ICU nurse. And the fact that the only thing that I broke was my neck during that accident, and seeing the car and the amount of damage, it is amazing that I didn't break anything else, and that I didn't have other injuries. I didn't have any head injuries or anything like that. It was just a broken neck. And I know
Were you wearing a seatbelt?
Yes, yeah, okay. I was wearing a seatbelt. It was a compression fracture. So from one of the flips, it just smashed the hood down so hard that it smashed down and broke my neck. And so they took me to the ICU, got me stabilized. I was conscious for the whole thing, the accident, everything, which was good because I was able to put my nursing hat on and basically try and keep control of the situation. And then I was in the ICU for about 2 weeks in Texas. And then once I was stable enough, they had me flown up to Oregon because my parents had moved to Oregon. So I recovered at Providence, Portland Acute Rehab Center, and I was there for 3 months. During that time, I went from having zero movement from here down to being able to move my fingers on one hand, not on the other. And like my right leg is actually pretty strong. So I can walk with it some, with crutches. My left leg is really spastic and not very strong. And so I kind of call it a kickstand. So I just kind of get on it to get to the next step.
Right.
If I'm going to walk, but they're very short distances because it's really unstable walking, and just with my balance, it's not the safest thing for me to be doing. So that's why I use the wheelchair almost full time, because it is just much safer, makes me more independent, all of that. After I got out of the hospital, and while I was in the hospital, I actually had a significant other. And it's weird, but I was on my way to meet him actually when I got in the accident. And he was a nurse anesthetist, and so he like understood what was going on with me and came to visit me in the ICU and stuff. And then we ended up dating, and he lived in Florida and I lived in Oregon, and he would come up like once a month for a long weekend. And he was actually super helpful in the beginning. And then about 6 months after my accident, he proposed and we were engaged. And then I started getting off of my pain medications. And as I got off my pain medications, I started realizing that we were not compatible. Just our basic values were very different. He was raised in southern Mississippi, and I was raised in Southeast Michigan with a dad that told me I was a strong woman that could do anything. And we just had a lot of differing views on things. And, he's a good guy. I have nothing against him. We were not right together. And so we broke things off just like short of a year after my accident. And so I wasn't devastated. I was just more like annoyed that I had stuck it out with him and allowed myself to get engaged to a guy that afterwards was just icky with my own personal values. So yeah, I was a little sad for like about 2 weeks. And then I had some friends tell me to try out Tinder. And they're like, Tinder is just fun. Like you just like swipe left, swipe right. Oh, it's kind of like being at a bar. Like, oh, I want to talk to that guy. I don't want to talk to that guy,
Right.
So I signed up for Tinder and I started going on dates. And Tinder was interesting because I found that my wheelchair was what I call douche repellent. But it made it so that the guys that did talk to me were actually like interested in getting to know me. They weren't just wanting a hookup, because I had pictures of my wheelchair up there. I had plenty of, enough information in the pictures and the bio that it was like, okay, this girl's got some stuff going on. And so I met some really great guys and I dated some really great guys. And one of the guys is one of my like best friends now. He's actually the first date that I went on with a firefighter.
Nice.
And then him and I ended up, just staying friends, and he got married and has a kid now. And, we're just great friends. And then I dated a couple other guys. I dated a guy who was he was a retired Miami Dolphins football player. So he was giant. So he could like pick me up and move wherever I needed to move, because it was like this giant man.
And he was up in your area? He wasn't in Florida?
Yeah.
Oh,
he lived
nice.
in Portland. Yeah. And then
Portland, nice.
Yeah. And then let's see, it was October 12th of 2014. I was watching Walking Dead, and my Tinder thing popped up that someone had answered like my hey, and it was Mike. And his reply to my hey was, hey, I've kind of decided I'm done with this. Like, I'm done dating right now. I got, I had a messy divorce, and then I dated someone for a year or two and it didn't go well. And I tried this dating thing. It's just not going well. He's like, you seem like a really interesting person, so I'd love to just keep in contact with you. Here's my number. Text me if you ever want to meet up. And I was like, So I texted him immediately. And then we like texted back and forth that night. And by the end of that night, we decided to meet for coffee the next day.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And
so we met for coffee. And then at coffee, within the first 10 minutes, we were planning our itinerary for the weekend for like our first like real date. And we were making it like a full weekend date. And it was going to start on Saturday. And then he called me on like Wednesday after we talked every day that week. But on Wednesday, he's like, I can't wait till Saturday. Will you come hang out with me on Friday? He's like, but he's a high school teacher. He's like, but I'm working at the football game to make some extra money. So to hang out, you'd have to come to the school where he works, to the football game.
Yeah.
All of his coworkers and his students. And I got there and met them all. And they're like, oh my gosh, we've been hearing about you all week. And
oh, it's so cute.
Yeah. And it was pretty much, I mean, at that point, like we spent the entire weekend together. And then by the end of the month, we had said, I love you. And a year later, on October 30th is when he said, I love you the first time. So October 30th of 2015, he proposed. And then we got married on the property here. We have like 5 acres out in the country now, in Hood River, which is outside of Portland. But we got married on the property here August of 2016.
Now, so everybody wants to know, inquiring minds wants to know, okay, so you guys knew right away you were right for each other. You probably knew when you were texting, you got the vibe.
Yeah.
You probably knew when you saw his picture. Those things are very instinctive, I understand. But what about intimacy? Did you feel comfortable with him right away? Was there like weirdness, or were you okay? So how long did that take to overcome? And did he? I mean,
it did not take long. Let's just say I went to the football game that night and it rained really hard. So when I got back to his place, which was not accessible, so I had to use like my crutches to get around and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Which then meant that I didn't have my wheelchair to get undressed and dressed. So therefore I needed help to get undressed. So things progressed very quickly.
Because you were wet. Wow, that's a good one, Lyndsey.
I was soaking.
Oh, I need help and I'm wet.
Yep, I was frozen.
That's adorable.
I had to have him help undress me.
Oh, that's adorable. So how old are you now?
I'm 33.
Oh, you're just a baby.
And he is 44.
Oh, okay. Older man. Well, that's smart. So he had no qualms then about the disability. He felt
no. He really, like, I think at first he did, and we've talked about that. Like at first there were a few times where he was like, "Oh shit, this is real." Like,
okay,
like there are things here that I, when I had like a complication show up or something like that.
Right.
Especially early on, it was like, whoa, this is the real deal. But then other things, like one night very, very early on, I drank too much, and I don't drink anymore because it just really makes me feel like my body feels sick. But at this point, like, we'd gone out for Halloween and I had too many drinks and I was new to caffeine myself. And I could not get it for the life of me. And I didn't have a mirror or setup or anything like that. And so Mike had to come in with a headlamp on and cath me.
I love it.
This is like less than a month after we met.
He's like, I'm going in, Lyndsey. I'm going in.
Yeah,
He's never done that before. He probably never knew what a urethra was.
No, and he was so funny through the whole thing because he would like hit something and be like, is that it? I'm like, no, that's this. Go down a little further, and like.
That is a great
But,
story. Wow.
yeah.
I love it. I love it. So he is definitely a keeper. So what is the
Yes.
plan as far as he's a teacher, you're still going to school. I know you're finishing up and you're doing advocacy work. We'll get to that in a minute. But what are your plans as far as having kids?
We're planning on adoption, actually.
Lovely.
C for me would just be too much of a hardship on my body.
Okay.
And potential for loss of function is too high. And so I am trying to keep what I got.
Right.
And there's kids out there that need a home. And
I
so
love that.
really,
That's beautiful. What
we
an
really
inspiration.
want to adopt. Yeah.
Well, you already have adopted, haven't you? Didn't you adopt a high school?
Well, we took legal guardianship over a high school student, and then his parents ended up going to jail. So then we ended up with full custody over him for a brief period of time, because then he turned 18.
Okay.
And so once he turned 18, we're no longer like his legal guardians, but he still lives with us, and he's still like our kid. I still call him my kid. He's still.
Aww. So did you, so how are you earning income now? I mean, do you mind me asking? Because I mean, a lot of people who are newly injured and you're only 3 years, that's a big strain on their lives. Were you able to, get money through your lawsuit, or are you able to work, or what is your process now?
I get Social Security disability.
Okay, good.
I get scholarships right now for school, and one of my scholarships is through the Craig Nielsen Foundation, which it's only offered at like 10 schools right now, but it's basically a full ride scholarship.
Excellent.
And then they give you social or supplementary, income, like supplementary funds for
living expenses.
Yeah, for living.
Okay. So we're going to be calling you Dr. Lyndsey very soon.
I sure hope so.
How long will that be?
Goes right. If everything goes as planned, April of 2020. So. Okay,
well, that's right around the corner.
Yep.
Well, your life is really obviously hugely making a difference, not only in your husband, because he found such a beautiful, wonderful girl, but in the young man that you adopted, and to all those who you will in the future. And you're giving back. I mean, you're spending so many hours doing advocacy work. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the advocacy work I do, it's nothing formal. I literally just put it out there on the spinal cord injury groups that, hey, I'm a nurse. I have a lot of knowledge. I have a lot of experience. I did trauma ICU. I did anesthesia. I really understand pain and how to combat pain from different receptors, not just trying to hit one receptor for pain. And then things just like the physiology of things that go on with us, how to explain to somebody, the process of cathing yourself when they're, newly injured and wanting to learn how to cath, or, going over, like I've done things like, a person overheard nurses gossiping about her, and it was inappropriate gossip. And so I talked to that person, and instead of instead of taking over and being like, I'll call them and take care of this, I gave her the language necessary in order to call them and have them take it seriously. And it was taken very seriously. And
that's incredible. Wow, that is a huge
help. An apology. Yeah.
Well, I know that you had offered to do that on our site, and we will definitely be giving people the option in the show notes to contact you if they have questions or they need mentoring. So that's very generous of you, Lyndsey, given the fact that you're, going to school full time, and, I'm sure you're home to take care of your husband. And we all know it takes a long time just to be us, right?
Yeah.
So now I want to talk to you a little bit about what your plan is. Okay, so here you are going back to school, getting something that you can do because they really couldn't accommodate you. Although I know there's nurses out there, I just want to make a point about that. There are nurses out there with spinal cord injuries. And I think there was a New Mobility or somebody did a beautiful article about that. So I don't want to make anybody think that they can't be a nurse, but in your case, they weren't able to accommodate you.
Right.
Number two, I want everybody to understand that not everybody with a spinal cord injury can have children. Most can and do. Rachel Chapman is a great example. She's a quadriplegic. I am a C-5 Incomplete as well, almost your level. I've had two girls naturally. So it's important that people know that too. But everybody's different. Not everybody can, depending on your pain and your situation. So, I'm sure as a nurse you'd want me to make those statements. So let's talk about your health, because I know you're advising other people. What are some of the bigger challenges that you've had? How have you overcome them? And maybe some advice for people so that they can prevent them.
So my biggest challenge has been and continues to be bowel management. My bowels they either don't want to respond at all to medication, or they completely over respond to medication. And my bowel issues, if I'm real constipated, will cause low blood pressure, make it really difficult for me to even get out of bed during the day. And that's something I still struggle with. Mm-hmm. And I have plenty of knowledge. I've seen specialists. And the biggest thing for me is my diet, and making sure that I do some physical activity during the day.
That's great advice.
And things like natural probiotics. So sauerkraut, beet kvass, natural yogurt, things that have natural probiotics in it have helped quite a bit with the bowel issues. But I will say, I went through a period of time where I lost over 30 pounds because of my bowel issues. And it was not a good loss of weight. I lost a lot of muscle strength because of it. And I even had protein in my urine because my body was literally eating itself. And so, it's even for somebody who has, basic 2 master's degrees
in nursing,
it's difficult, right? And so it's difficult for everybody. And that's one thing that I really want to get across, is that we're all struggling, and we all just really need to be there to support each other, right?
Yes. I love that. I gotta ask you though, I'm a little bit curious, and I hope you don't mind, but I need to understand this a little better. You mentioned pain before. Is it because of the pain medication that your bowels are a little bit more difficult to manage?
No, I'm actually not on any narcotics.
Okay. So what do you think is the issue?
So I have I had an infection in my bowel a few years ago that then caused diffuse inflammation in my whole colon. So my colon was inflamed, and then it got kind of loopy, and so it shut down and it wouldn't push anything out. And this issue, if I didn't want to go straight to a colostomy, can take 2 to 3 years to
completely heal
back. Yep. And so I'm the kind of person that I'll take the hard road over the surgery route, just because I worked in hospitals and I know what can go wrong. So I stay away from elective surgery. Not to say that people should stay away from elective surgery. This is just my personal choice. Stay away from it. It's my own, thing. And colostomies are incredibly helpful for people and can be a life changer. And it's definitely something like a possibility for me down the road.
Okay.
But I like to try and do like, let's do the diet and exercise. Let's do the holistic route first and see if we can't fix this. And I've actually gotten it under much better control. And I'm happy to say I've gained 7 pounds and I've kept it on. So that's been really exciting. So yeah. But yeah, I'd really say like bowel is my biggest issue. And that's one that a lot in spinal cord injury world is bowel and then bladder, urinary tract infections, having to cath, having bladder spasms, having leaking, those types of things. So like for me, for my bladder, I get Botox injections twice a year, and those help a ton. And then I don't have to take the Ditropan or oxybutynin that a lot of people take. That bad dry mouth. The Botox doesn't do that. It just relaxes your bladder.
I've never tried that.
Yeah, I think it works great. I mean, I've done it for the past 5 years now, and I absolutely love it.
So what do you think now, having a bowel infection is not something that's, again, related to the spinal cord injury, correct? Because I've never heard of that. So that's just something that happened, and then it was exacerbated by the fact that you're paralyzed.
Yep, it was flu, right? It was stomach flu, but because my bowel is empty normally, and it takes a while for it to like fill up and notice like, oh, it's time to empty. The caustic kind of diarrhea sat in my colon, and with all of like the acids and stuff from digestion hadn't been broken down and absorbed how they usually are, caused the inflammation.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so now that's almost all cleared up. What about like how everybody's diet is different, and I had issues with that, for years as I was, working full time, raising 2 girls, most of it, as a single mom, but at times married. I took a test like 10 years ago now, I guess. And it was just a blood test, and it was called the ALCAT, ALCAT. And it changed my life because I found out, not knowing this, that I was highly sensitive to casein, which is in milk. Mm-hmm. And I was highly sensitive or moderately sensitive to wheat, or gluten, as we call it. Once I knocked those 2 things out, I stopped having all those issues. Yeah. So I'm really wondering if sometimes people, if it's not an infection like yours, given the fact that it's harder for us to run to the bathroom, some people may not have as much control or low control. Maybe consider, what do you think about that? Maybe consider trying to find out, are there actual, not allergies, but food sensitivities? What do you think? Yeah.
And seeing someone like a naturopath, if they're available in your area is really, or, a registered dietitian or a nutritionist. Those people can really help you with your diet. Other ways to do it, if you can't access the test or don't want to do it that way, is just trial and error. Like, stop drinking beer for a week and see if your belly feels better.
That's true.
That was for me, I realized, oh, hey, when I don't drink alcohol and I go out with my friends, or if I only have 1 drink as opposed to 3 drinks, I sleep through the night and don't have horrible neuropathy.
Oh. Okay, go back. What is neuropathy? The audience.
So the neuropathy is that that pins and needles, tingling, burning sensation. So I have from here all the way down.
Yes. And what is that caused by for you? What caused that?
That the spinal cord injury caused that.
Oh, no, but you said certain things triggered it.
Oh, so certain things make it worse.
Okay.
So alcohol makes it worse.
Really?
Makes it worse.
What is the second thing?
Sugar.
Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
I wonder why alcohol would make that worse.
I'm not sure, but it just
For you, it does. Maybe it dehydrates you. Maybe it dehydrates you and causes pain in your bladder. Pain, yeah. I always wondered about that, about just pain in general, and uncomfortableness. If you can't feel something and it's actually annoying you, that could trigger neuropathy.
Yeah, I mean, my neuropathy it's temperature sensitive, it's food sensitive, it's sensitive to everything.
Yes, I know what you mean. I've been getting that lately too, and I don't really know why. It's just a strange thing. Just happens out of the blue. I don't know why. Suddenly I have sensitivity in my, just chills and sensitivity to touch. And yeah, it's not a great thing. And who knows why, right? I guess we can figure it out. Life is always a mystery. You never know what you're going to wake up with. You mentioned something about your big picture goals, and I really loved it. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you today. So I want to get to that before we close. Here are some of the keywords. Intimacy. Again, we mentioned wholeness. Living a life of wholeness. I want you to explain that. Wellness, social well-being, the social determinants of health, purpose, connection, and income. Education. Tell me about how you feel that your role now as a doctorate and educating nurses and educating the community on what to do when they're not in the acute care setting, when the patient comes in and you let them go and you go, okay, you're all fixed, go home. What can we do after that to support all those things that you just mentioned, or that I just mentioned, that your words that I just repeated?
Yeah, for me, the purpose of my doctorate work is really to help educate healthcare providers and future healthcare providers, like the needs of people with disabilities, and basically having higher expectations of people with disabilities, because we have low expectations.
Very true.
Because of those low expectations, we tend to not push things like resources for education, for vocational rehab, for things like that. And a lot of it has to do with low expectations. A lot of it has to do with just general society's attitudes, and then also that physicians and nurses, healthcare providers in general, haven't really been educated on the realities of disability and living with a disability outside of the hospital setting. And because of that, they don't have the knowledge, skills, and attitudes necessary to properly, advocate for health and wellness of people with disabilities. And so that's my big push with just my own doctoral work. But
I love that.
Yeah.
So what does that mean in the real world? I mean, because I go to see my doctor, I say, hey doctor, my finger hurts, can you fix it? I'm just giving a real life example because my finger hurts. Now, how is that doctor? You train them. They went to modules. They went through modules that you taught. Or could be continuing education, which is amazing. What are they going to do for me? They're going to say, okay, your thumb hurts. Right. Last time I went in, this is what they do. Oh, your thumb hurts. Let me give you a shot. What does Lyndsey want them to do?
So Lyndsey wants them to, address the issue that you have going on right now. But I also want them to be giving you questionnaires that address things like your housing or your food security or your financial needs, or what, and a line that literally says what are your goals, and just have them write their goals out, and then that physician can either advocate for them themselves, or what I'm hoping for in our community is to build a network of people that the physician then refers someone.
Oh my gosh, I love this.
To my my group of people, and then we go to work putting together the resources in the community or from the state or from, national, whatever, in order to support that person. So like when I was in my accident, my mom's a nurse anesthetist, my dad's a hospital chief executive. You couldn't ask for a better support system.
No.
And it was still difficult for me to navigate things, but certainly much easier than most people. And so really what I want to do for people is give them a sense of support, like what I felt after my injury.
Yes, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Lyndsey, so when you say my people, is that like you're going to start an organization that the doctor has as a resource that they can then go to and say, here's the form, let's get this all is that what you're talking about?
That's the hope. That would be the
wow. And is this look like a nonprofit or a for-profit, or how do you figure
it would be nonprofit for sure. It would be part of the Columbia Gorge Health initiatives that we have. So
you go Oregon.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, to be honest, there's a group out, my brain is not working. It's out in California, Triumph Foundation. I'm gonna give them a shout out. We'll put them in the notes for the people in California. Similar, sounds like a similar process. Maybe if you haven't seen them, maybe you should look them up, see what they're doing, and work with their executive director. Just kind of brainstorm,
Yeah, that would be really cool.
They do a lot of fundraisers and they do a lot of work, and I think that that's very similar to what they do.
Yeah. And then,
well, that's really, and also, I mean, we would love for you to write with us and to share your knowledge. I mean, obviously you're doing that today, and that's extremely generous and we appreciate it. That's really what Push Living is about, pushing the boundaries of health and well-being and business if they want to go into business. And you just said, what are your goals? I love that you add that into, oh my gosh, nobody ever asked that. Matter of fact, the last time I went to the eye doctor, he said, so what happened to you? Okay. He's a doctor. Oh, I had a car accident. I was 18. Oh, that really sucks. That's what he said. That's it.
Yeah.
That really sucks.
Yeah. And that's
thanks, doc. It's really helpful.
And that's part of the medical model that we're taught, where if we don't prevent it or cure it as healthcare providers, we failed. That's kind of what you're taught in school. At least that's kind of
like you're screwed.
Yeah, like if you don't prevent disability or cure the disability, then you as a healthcare provider have failed. And so then they just stop addressing the disability at all, as if it's like not a huge part of our health and wellness.
Right.
And so that's something that I think needs to constantly be addressed. And it needs,
my gosh,
at every visit, like things change, and you may not have needed support before, but hell, this last 6 months you got your butt kicked and had to buy new wheels because insurance wouldn't cover them, and and now you need some help with food or something like that. And so
or you got a divorce, so you no longer have two incomes, or you're depressed because of any social isolation, which is a huge issue in our community. And I love the fact that you think about social connectedness to your community, and you're going to address all that. It sounds like I'm super excited for what you're doing. It makes me almost want to tear up, because it sounds like you can be a national model, for what should be done.
That would be the dream.
Yeah, I love that dream. And I really would love to do anything we can to support you. So tell us, as a community, the Push Living readers, some people are going to read this article. Some people will listen to it on our podcast, and some people will watch it on YouTube, because obviously we're live and we're doing this on video. What can we do to support you?
I mean, at this point, it's just a lot of times I'm putting out like surveys and things for people to fill out that have to do with like right now I'm doing one on physical activity guidelines. And so we have the evidence-based research that says someone with a spinal cord injury should exercise this much every week. But the way that it's written is not friendly for the spectrum of spinal cord injuries.
Exactly. Very good point.
So what I'm trying to do now is I sent out those guidelines to people with a survey, and then they would fill out the survey to say whether or not they could follow those guidelines, what injury level they are, what would they need in order to follow those guidelines.
I love it.
Has their physician ever talked to them about physical activity? Just get like a baseline for that, right? And
never.
Yeah. And they would talk to anybody else about their physical activity and their diet. But for some reason with us, they don't talk about it. So it's kind of like,
oh, wow.
Well, they can't really move. So, but there's ways. And, I'm just trying to figure out, like, how do we word these guidelines?
That's a brilliant idea, because I have no idea what the guidelines are. I mean, I've heard 10 minutes cardio, 30 minutes cardio. I mean, what is the answer to that?
I think I'd have to look at it, but I believe it's 2 to 3 times a week of weight exercises with any muscle groups that are working. And
resistance,
Yep. And then 3 times a week of 30 minutes of cardio.
30. If you could do 30 minutes, I guess you can break it up 10, 10, 10.
Yep. But it's just, getting
sustained.
Getting that sustained cardio in. And so, like, those guidelines, they seem like, oh, okay, like that's simple enough. But if you gave that to you or me, I might sit there and go, in order to do weight bearing, I've got to have somebody there with me helping to keep my arms in the right position. Otherwise, I'm going to be compensating the whole time and doing the wrong exercise, And so it's like things like that, where it's like, I could do triceps on my own. And it's like, no, wait, I couldn't, because if somebody's not there stabilizing my shoulder, I'm going to use my deltoid instead of my tricep, and
exactly.
Right. And so that's where I'm looking at, okay, how do we make these guidelines actionable for every person with a spinal cord injury? How do we
it's so expensive to, even if they're actionable, how do you afford to get someone to hold your deltoid while you do the tricep? I mean, it's, minimum 25, 50, and there's spinal cord injury programs out there and special neuro rehab centers, you can find.
But they all cost money.
They all cost money. Yeah.
Yeah. And so how do we make it so that someone who's a quadriplegic, we're giving them guidelines that they feel like are fair, are guidelines that are like, oh, I can actually follow this. Oh, there are resources online for me to go to, or there's, this company that will buy me a hand cycle, or, you know what I mean? And so, and those resources, they're out there. It's just, if you ask a healthcare provider, they don't know where they exist.
And you think that should be the first place. Well, obviously, that's the first place someone's going to go, other than places like, forums and groups.
Yeah.
Thank God we have the internet. We can talk to each other. You go to PUSHLiving, you can look up things like, we have tons of articles on, not to plug again, but we do have tons of articles on healthcare and riding bikes and swimming and all these different things that you can do and maybe you hadn't thought about.
Right.
We all have to learn from each other, Lyndsey. And it sounds like you have a beautiful future in front of you. And I'm so happy that we're a part of it now. And whatever we can do to kind of collaborate and work together to elevate disability, to make people, like you said, have higher expectations of themselves. Yeah. So give me, in the final moments here before we close, tell me some of your top health tips. I mean, you mentioned the bowel thing and the eating, which I love, and we're going to put that, if you don't mind, just send me a couple of the things you mentioned, that you eat, that are good probiotics and natural probiotics. I wouldn't be able to eat yogurt because of the dairy thing. That would actually mess me up more. So you got to be careful. You have to know what your body can handle. But other than that, what are some of your top health tips? And it could be emotional, could be mental.
Communicate with your loved ones very openly about whatever it is you're going through at the time, whether it be that you had a crappy day because you had a hard time getting your jacket on, or that your pain is worse, or that you're constipated. That helps keep your relationships healthy with people, because you're going to be cranky and annoyed during those times. There's no way to prevent being a little cranky and annoyed if you're uncomfortable. So just open communication with people helps them also to know that they're not doing anything wrong, and so,
not take it personally. I like that. That's a good point. So tell me how you would say that.
So I'll say things to my husband like, I just need like a quiet night tonight. I had a rough day today, and that now, like, he understands what that means. Like, when I say I need a quiet night, I had a rough day, it's just kind of like, okay, we're going to sit and watch a movie together and eat popcorn. We're not going to go out on the four-wheelers and go crazy in the mud with the dogs tonight. We're going to just sit and watch a movie.
I love it.
So, it helps you be protective of your own emotional state so that you are allowed to be somewhat annoyed at the time, because it's okay. You're feeling crappy. And then it also keeps your relationships healthy because you're being really open and honest. You're being vulnerable too. You're saying that you're not 100%, and that's a vulnerable thing to say. And then I guess the second thing that I'd say is get outside as much as possible. Get your hands in the dirt, get dirty, get muddy, go out, get out
in nature.
Get out in nature. I mean, I planted a garden on my porch this summer, and it helped with my depression more than anything has ever helped in my life.
Really?
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, and like, I'm sitting here looking at it right now, and it's fall and everything's kind of dying off, but it's still beautiful out there.
Oh, I love that. We actually did an article about gardening and how accessible gardening. So I'll put that in the show notes. Love that idea. I mean, it's very hard for most people to do it. I mean, I can't do it very well because, how do you get the plants to your house from the Home Depot, wherever you go, to your home? How do you plant them yourself if they're not in a raised bed? But, the article does give some tips on that. And, certainly you can comment too later and give us other tips. You can just comment on the article and see if there's something else that we missed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Lyndsey. Those were really great advices. I mean, I think that all of that is really a sign of a woman. You have shown me today something, and I hate to say this, not everybody has this, so it's not as easy. You were always driven. You always knew what you wanted to do. You always had a passion. That came from the fact that you had really amazing family support, which you mentioned. So we got to give a shout out to mom and dad.
Oh yeah.
You did not stay in a relationship that you didn't feel met your emotional needs and your soul and your values. A lot of people would have, because they have low self-esteem and they don't feel good about themselves, and they would have said, hey, maybe I can't get any better, and they'll live a life of misery. So congratulations on knowing that you had enough value that you could get what you deserved and what you really would work with you. So you've accomplished that. And then, you are now able to give back to people because you have cared enough about yourself that you're in a position to give back. And that is a beautiful thing. You have a passion, you have goals, and you have dreams. So we want that for everyone in Push Living. We want everyone to feel that way. And if they're not there now, we want you to know that, every day is one step at a time that you can get there. You don't have to be Lyndsey. You don't have to have her background and her beauty, obviously, and even her health and her ability to stand on her peg leg, whatever she calls it. It's really cute. Not all of us have that, that much function. But you're a great role model, and thank you for taking the time to share your story. And I know that we're going to hear more from you in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure sharing my story and just discussing things.
Yeah, it's been very inspirational. I think I've cried a few times. I don't know if you noticed. I get emotional. It just must be my age or something.
That's great.
I hope you don't mind.
I don't mind at all.
You're a doll, and I hope that we stay friends. And I don't know if you know about it, but we have an event in April called the Women on Wheels Empowerment Retreat in Miami. If you ever do want to come or, share it with your other ladies, let us know, because that's the kind of thing you'd be a great speaker at.
Yeah, that would be fun. I'll have to do that.
You're beautiful.
Well,
thank you so much, my love. I'm going to end our meeting today, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Ask Dr. Lyndsey. All right, love. Take care.
All right. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
This podcast is sponsored by PUSHLiving Photos, because using disability images in your marketing will help you create a positive and inclusive brand. When you buy PUSHLiving photo stock images, you get great photos of real people, and you can feel good knowing that your purchase is helping to change lives. This is the only stock image library that not only pays their photographer royalties, but also pays their models with disabilities for each sale. For them, this could mean help with out-of-pocket medical expenses, wheelchairs, home modifications, adapted vehicles, and more. The benefits are as diverse as our models. Show the world you care about people living with disabilities. Visit our website to purchase stock photos, join our team of models, or register to become a photographer. PUSHLivingPhotos.com.